Um, we should get our facts straight before making any statement as a professional. But what if you're an astronomer or a biologist and you still have this notion about unicorns on the dark side of the moon? Now, do you have to get your facts straight? Does this additional role based duty change your moral obligation to get your facts straight? This brings us to the third and the final element in the discussion in our session. The role based duties are the duties that are assigned as our professional duties, making these are assigned to our role as a professional. These make things a bit more ethically strict, and therefore they state that it is the duty of a professional to be informed about the matters concerning them. This is because professionals cannot seem to look ignorant or untrustworthy. They are an emblem of trust. When you think of going to a doctor, you have this notion in your mind that he is going to do everything in your favor. He is going to treat you, make you feel good, and not stitch you up wrong. Similarly, when we think about lawyers, we trust that they're updated in their case of law to the point where they can defend us. This makes it essential for professionals to maintain this integrity of trust, of knowledge, being knowledgeable. Now, consider the following scenarios. Would you trust a lawyer to defend you who is not up to date with civil law? Or an IT technician to not violate your privacy who has a past record? Or the police official to follow and abide by the law? The answer to all the scenarios is the same, that we only opt for professional help when there is an implied trust, that they're trustworthy. No one wants a lawyer to screw up their case or an IT technician to steal their private data and then misuse it. Professionals cannot afford to be perceived in a mistrusting manner. They cannot be considered ignorant. Otherwise, this compromises the professional client relationship. To uphold that, it is their special duty to keep up with the facts, do their research, not lie, and be honest. So, coming back to the examples of unicorns and Pluto, so now if you were an astronomer or a biologist with the theory of unicorns being there, well, your statement might create a havoc in the masses. This is because the public trusts the statements of professionals to uphold that integrity. It is the moral duty to keep up with the facts because the public trusts your statements. The same argument can be given for a government teacher who proclaims that Ziaul Haq ruled democratically, or an environmentalist denying that climate change is happening. In all of these cases, whether you're an astronomer, whether if you are a biologist, and if you believe that there are unicorns on the dark side of a Pluto, you are not knowledgeable, and if you pass on these statements, this might contradict to the image, and you might be perceived as an ignorant fool. Similarly, if you're a government teacher who proclaims that Ziaul Haq ruled democratically, this again would create a havoc. Or if you're an environmentalist, it is your duty to look up what climate change is and to be factful, to be knowledgeable at that point. So, this brings us to the final words. As stated, professionals they need to be knowledgeable. They need to be constantly updated with their field knowledge. But should professionals always be honest? The answer to that is more complicated. From a long time, we have been listening to the fact that honesty is the best policy. But turns out, ethically, honesty is not always the best policy. Consider the previous cases that we just talked about. For example, take the case of a lawyer. But consider this scenario in a different light. Should a lawyer withhold information from the police to protect confidentiality or not? You've already read the case study of the buried bodies, right? Where the lawyers withheld information from the police on the point to preserve the client's confidentiality. Were they being dishonest? Did they make the right decision? Or if you're going to talk about an IT technician, should an IT technician violate the privacy of an alleged criminal to prevent further damage? Again, an honest approach of that IT technician might not allow him to violate the privacy. But by not doing that, he or she might be aiding the criminal to do even further damage. What should he or she do? Again, think about it. And lastly, if you're a police official, can you break the law to catch a prisoner? The special consideration needs to be given to the doctors and physicians because they have even more of a dilemma when it comes to the professional honesty. For example, the question arises that should physicians lie to insurance companies, as we have previously used this example, typically by providing a dishonest diagnosis that is covered rather than an honest one that is not? Or should oncologists tell the cancer patients upright or use some kind of nuanced language to break it down to them? All of these examples explain that it is not always being honest that is the right or the ethical approach. The question that we asked ourselves in the beginning, that should we trust someone who hold to their promises no matter how trivial, comes into play here as well. To be professional means that you have to be honest. But honesty alone doesn't justify other stuff. Kindness and compassion comes into play as well. Also, our roles make a huge difference as well. To be kind is to even lie or withhold that information if it's going to benefit the client or if it's going to benefit the greater good. But our roles as a professional make a huge difference on the amount of kindness and compassion that we can use or we can imply on our daily professional lives. For example, take the case of a defense attorney as compared to the judges. The honesty demand is very variable. Lawyers are expected to twist the facts and even deceive the court to protect their clients. However, if you're gonna look at the judges, they're expected to that hold the decision or to even give that decision in utmost honesty, and they have to keep the law above everything else. They cannot be kind or compassionate about the criminals at trial, no matter how much they want it. The level of kindness and compassion for both of them, be it the defense attorneys or the law or the judges, they're different. However, professionalism doesn't mean that you have to be cruel. As stated earlier, to be professional is to be honest but not cruel. Kindness and compassion go hand in hand with brutal honesty. So, if you are an oncologist or a therapist, using lighter words is more recommended. Instead of saying that the patient has a cancer, usage of words like growth or tumor might make the patients more hopeful. And this nuanced language, this balanced language, this morally gray language, it is vital to effective communication with them. And if you can make them more hopeful about their treatment, they might be more willing to go along with that. Lastly, the decision as to how much honesty is to be balanced with kindness varies from person to person, from client to client, and from role to role. It is expected that the professional benefit the client as much as they reasonably could. This reasonably could caveat makes everything onto the judgment of the professionals. And thus, it is again reinforced that they should be knowledgeable in their fields, because if a therapist isn't knowledgeable that using of nuanced language is more effective as compared to giving outright facts about the cancer, he would not be doing what is best for the client. So all of these parameters, they come into play, and honesty should be balanced with kindness and compassion. So to conclude everything, we have been talking about fidelity, trust, promises, honesty, lying, and all of these as a separate entities. But now we're going to bring them all together in a more coherent manner. So, to conclude, we ask this question. So, what exactly does ethics imply about fidelity, honesty, and role based duties? To summarize, well, number one, it's about fidelity, trust, and promise keeping. As explained, fidelity or being faithful, it is really important to preserve the trust which acts as a glue in all professional client relationship. But it's not something that lies in the black and white region. Everything is in the gray region and nothing can be quantified, and it is on your moral judgment. On the other hand, coming to dishonesty, lying is only when you deliberately withhold or wrongly communicate the information. However, being a professional, it is your special duty to get the facts right, to be knowledgeable, so that you can preserve the image of all the professionals and the clients can trust you. Moreover, honesty alone is insufficient, and brutal honesty is downright cruel at very sensitive points. So, while honesty points to telling of truth, kindness and compassion, however, demands to remaining silent or even lying. As a professional, both of these go hand in hand with fidelity and honesty. Using nuanced language might be better in case of brutal instead of brutal honesty at sensitive places. And lastly, your professional role might define the amount of strictness in your ethical values. However, this is something very fluid. In the end, it comes down to balancing your duties and your moral values with everything else. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more lectures.